Alright. Think everything's on this time. Mic's on, camera's on. Should be good to go. How's everybody doing this week? Probably cold, I guess, today. I'm listening to the wind angrily howl outside. I'm wearing my, what are these things called? Huggles? Snuggles? Snoogies? Oodies? Whatever. Talk about Western luxuries. Sitting in here in my blanket hoodie with my space heater back there, just being a big baby, like the worst Canadian ever. But anyway, hope everybody's staying warm. This week's chapters were very interesting to me, basically just because I think it's really toxic, the relationship that the Western world has with food, and like this whole, I guess, idealization of like gluttony. Like, it's just so normalized to eat all the time and to eat too much and to eat garbage, and it's just it's so bad. And what stood out to me, and what is a good point, is that our bodies biologically aren't evolved or designed to eat any of this crap, and so it's no surprise to me that Westerners have a whole host of, what was it, non-communicable diseases as compared to traditional societies. Because, I mean, what do you expect to happen when you're pumping your body full of absolute garbage on a daily basis? And I say this with all guilt, because I am the worst trash goblin ever. I love garbage food. It's terrible. I'm such a sugar addict. It's horrible. And that study about babies and salt and how they're affected long term, like well into their later lives, by the salt intake that happens to them in their babyhood or whatever, I think that was really kind of horrifying actually, because some of the stuff that we're feeding our babies and our kids, it really makes you wonder what kind of health issues that those kids are going to have later in their life, especially with it being so normalized. And with childhood obesity being such a problem now, it breaks my heart. It makes me so sad when you see a little 4 or 5 year old, and they're already so overweight that they can't play with the other kids at the park, they can't keep up. That breaks my heart. It really does. And that'll lead into a point I'm going to make later, about the whole body positivity movement and stuff, because I think that movement's been twisted and warped as well. Just some other things that I wanted to point out, though. I already mentioned that marketing is directed towards kids, and I think that that's really problematic, because they market all of this unhealthy food directly to the children by putting their favorite characters on it, by theming it, after their favorite shows and all of this stuff. So it makes it even harder for parents to say no, and for parents to try to implement these healthier choices. It's even harder because all these healthy choices are marketed with like bland boxes, bland names, bland labels, not marketed towards really anybody. It's not appealing, it doesn't look appealing, whereas all of this unhealthy stuff, it's all colorful and it appeals to kids, and it's got catchphrases and slogans. It's the commercials that you see that get stuck in your head. It's just toxic. It's so bad, and I really feel for all the parents out there, because it's got to be so difficult to try to balance keeping your kid happy and actually doing what is good for them and what they need. It's got to be such a tricky balance, and really just all the props to you guys, because you're incredible, and I don't know how you do it. A couple things that really stood out to me actually about, Dr. Hamilton's lecture titles. Dr. Hamilton mentioned that the average Westerner, I think he said, or was it in England, eats about 150 to 200 pounds of sugar a year. That's nuts! But when I think about how much sugar I eat just on a daily basis, I can see how that would add up. Like, I would say mine's even upwards of that, because I don't even want to think about how much sugar I eat. Not good. And then it was mentioned that about 40% of, I think it was an adolescent's diet is sugar. Wow, or sugar carbohydrates. Oh my, that's way too high. That's so scary, so alarming. Like, gee, I wonder why all of these problems keep resurfacing, it's just 40%. That's huge. And then that makes me wonder, where is it going to be in another 20 years if we don't make some changes now? How horrible is this stuff going to be even further down the line? And then we kind of moved on to this whole idea of the ritual act of eating, I guess, and like the whole idea of eating together, it's just not normal anymore, and that makes me really sad because I grew up in a family where my parents were together. I guess you could call it a nuclear family. It was my parents and myself and my sister, and we used to have supper together at the dinner table pretty much every night, and we were able to do that because my mom was a stay-at-home mom for a long time until I was about 7 or 8 years old, and then she started working, part-time and then eventually full-time, and it did completely change the way that we eat supper. We went from eating around the dinner table and, talking about how our day was and just talking and seeing each other to we would, still cook, still have a meal, but then you grab your plate and you end up eating in your lap, usually in front of the TV. And so nobody talks to each other. You just watch until you're done eating, and then when the first person's done eating, they go and, go back to whatever they were doing. And I think that's really strange too, because when we used to eat together at the table, it was kind of like courtesy or common practice to just wait until everybody was finished eating before you leave the table. And I don't know if that's a thing anymore. I don't know if that's like proper manners, or if it ever was, or if it's just something weird that my family's done, but I'm pretty sure that used to be like a pretty common practice, was that everybody sits down to eat, you wait for everybody to be at the table before you start eating, you all eat together, and then, the first person finishes and you politely wait and you continue to talk, you continue to have that, I guess, kind of communal experience until everybody's finished, and then the act of eating is done, you get all of the stuff together and you clean up together. And I just think that that's completely abolished now, like you don't see it anymore. It's very strange. Even my boyfriend and I, with his son, we try to make a point to sit down and have a meal together every time he has them for the night, which is about half the week. So for about half the week, when his son is there, we do sit down and we all eat together. But even still, it's more so just to get his son to eat, so that we're all sitting there watching him eat. It's less so about the a social aspect and less about the ritual aspect of it, and more so just so we can give him the eyeball until he finishes his supper. And then I just added one more comment about the ritual eating and stuff. It was mentioned that in a lot of other societies and other cultures, lunch breaks and stuff at work are really emphasized, and like you really have to sit down and take your time to eat and relax. And that is so not the practice here in Western society, or at least not for any of the companies I've worked for. I used to be a line cook for a long time, actually. I was a line cook, I was a prep cook, I was night supervisor, I worked in the kitchen for a very long time. It was pretty much the first 5 years of my working life. I worked in the kitchen, and the irony of working in a kitchen is that you never get time to eat. You're so busy trying to make sure that everybody else is eating and that the food is out the door that you just don't get breaks. And I don't smoke cigarettes, so I did not get breaks at all. As a cook, your break is your smoke break, and I didn't smoke, so I did not get breaks. And that went on for years. I just let myself get taken advantage of. I used to eat lunches. If I got the chance to eat lunch, I would eat it over a garbage can, just praying that nobody sees you, that you don't get caught, that you have enough time to just get it in your body so that you can keep going without passing out. It was just no regard for the ritual of eating, I guess. Zero regard whatsoever. It was just like, I ate out of necessity. And I think that is the practice for a lot of people who work in such a fast-paced environment. And the truth is just that the Western society is so fast-paced now that that's the reality of eating. It's just you eat out of necessity or you eat for pleasure, but either way you eat, you're done, move on. It's just part of that instant gratification and just that fast-paced society. This video is getting long already, so I'm going to try to wrap it up. But one of the comments that I wanted to make about the body positivity movement in the Western society is just that it's been so twisted. Pardon me. And that I think it started out as a movement to embrace any kind of body extremes or defaults or anything like that. Like I've seen body positivity movements around amputees and people who have any kind of a physical disability and stuff like that, and I love that. I think that that's what the body positivity movement should be about. It should be about things about your body that you can't help, things that you were born this way, this is how it is, and you should embrace that and celebrate that about yourself. But it has been twisted now to encourage obesity, and that is so alarming to me because it's taken this idea of all bodies are beautiful and it's applying it to unhealthy bodies, and I don't think that that's a good thing. And I might get some backlash for this, but I don't think we should be celebrating things that are not healthy and things that are genuinely detrimental, like generationally. Like this, if we make it normal as a society to be obese, and we celebrate it and we say this is beautiful and this is, the what we want, this is what we want to attain, then what does that say to our kids? It says that this unhealthy lifestyle isn't only okay, it's celebrated, like this is the goal. And that's super scary to me. And I'm not saying that people who are overweight or who struggle with their weight aren't beautiful. They are, of course, and yes, they should feel good about themselves, like, of course. But I'm just saying that it's kind of a little bit twisted how we're celebrating it. Like, it's not love yourself, in your entirety. It's being twisted into like this whole fat is beautiful or big is beautiful, and that's the phrase I've heard, is big is beautiful. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, these really, really skinny people are being shamed and being labeled as unhealthy. And it's like, why is extreme, thinness and extreme malnutrition unhealthy, but the opposite of the spectrum is celebrated? Like, no, both extremes are unhealthy, and that needs to be acknowledged. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't love yourself no matter what you look like, because you should. And like, please do. Please love yourself. That is so important. But I think that should be like a love yourself movement. That should be like separate from the body positivity movement, because in my mind, body positivity should be celebrating things about ourselves that we can't help, not celebrating something that could be helped, but we are just too lazy or just unable to help it. And I'm going to backpedal a little bit more here, because, of course there are those situations where people are overweight, due to medical reasons, whatever. There's situations when people are overweight and they try to help it and they don't change, and then that's fine. Like, that's not your fault. I get it. And it's the same with extreme skinny people. Sometimes they try to put on weight and they just can't. That's just, that's reality. Like, some people are genuinely just, kind of stuck where they are despite all of their efforts. And if you are trying, that's great. But I do see a lot of the unfortunate cases where it is just these very unhealthy people who are trying to slide their way into this body positivity movement as an excuse to not try to do better. And that really is upsetting for me, especially because I grew up very, very, very skinny naturally, and everybody always used to tell me, like, oh, eat a sandwich, put on some weight, God, you're so unhealthy looking. And it's like, why is that okay? But if I tell someone to eat a salad and make healthier choices, I'm the asshole. Whatever. That's just my 2 cents on that. Obviously, that's a whole debate. But I just think it has a lot to do with this whole normalization of unhealthy food and unhealthy lifestyle. Like, it's just so normal now to be unhealthy, and I think that that's really sad. Oh, and then I also just wrote down sugar equals crack, because for real it is, and we feed that to our kids directly. And like, I do it. I feed my nieces sugar all the time. I mentioned, I'm a trash goblin who like pretty much mainlines sugar on a daily basis. It's horrible, and I think as a society we really need to take a look at that, because whoosh, yikes. Anyway, 13 minutes now. Yikes, we're making another movie this week. But then I just wrote down some things that I would take away from the book overall, because what a great novel, honestly. I thought it was really, really interesting. I found myself lately lecturing my nieces and all of the young people in my life about gratitude, because I'm like, hey, we just read a chapter about survival and like dangers where like some of these people have to scare off lions just to eat, just to feed their family, and you're sitting here complaining because you got to eat like this beautifully made dinner and you have to eat your vegetables. Like, wow, your life's so hard. Yeah, so I've been lecturing all of these young people in my life, just being like, hey, you could be fighting off lions with sticks, you should be grateful. Classic move. But anyway, some things that I would take away from this novel is definitely, the 2 big ones for me was treatment of the elderly and child rearing. Like, I thought that those chapters were so important, because our treatment of the elderly just isn't where it needs to be. We don't pay enough attention to them, and it's becoming a whole issue on its own, like where there's having to be whole movements, for these old people to feel less lonely. Like, that's obviously speaks to something that's gone wrong in our society, because I don't think such a huge chunk of our society should be left on their own and just forgotten about. That's so sad. So obviously we have a lot to learn from traditional societies in terms of how to treat each other, I guess, and just how to be more human and be more social, and I guess just be more involved, be more present, and to involve other people more actively. And then the child rearing thing, I think in the same kind of same umbrella of ideas, we need to involve our children more, like in our day-to-day lives. Let them see and let them learn by seeing. Let them be a part of it. And you know, two birds could be killed with one stone there if we just, you know, involve the elderly more with teaching our young. Then the young get to be more actively involved in lives, they get to learn more. The elderly get to feel like they're more actively involved, they get to teach, they get to impart their wisdom, and they get to feel more like they left a real legacy behind, you know, beyond just their DNA walking the earth. They get to actually leave behind a legacy of their own knowledge, of their own wisdom, which I think is really important. And then just the two other main things that I took from the book overall is just to be more vigilant and more observant, because really this whole society that we live in, where it's just distractions, you're just being fed, you know, ads and being fed information all the time constantly, it's just like really important to kind of try to pay more attention to your real surroundings, like not your, you know, social media, not your virtual surroundings, but like take a step back and just look around, like, you know, admire the sunset, you know, look at some birds, go, you know, go kick rocks, go do something that's real, go sit by the river and, like, I don't know, strum your guitar, go do something that feels real, instead of just pretending to do real things so that you can post a picture of it on media. Like, it's so sad how much of the real present world that we miss out on every single day just because we're so lost in the virtual world. It's something huge, I think, that we could take away from traditional societies is just to observe and to be present. And that's my biggest point, and the point that I want to close off on, because this is so long, and I'm really sorry everybody for ranting, but I think as a society and on an individual scale, the biggest thing that we can take from traditional societies is just to slow down. Slow down. Take a breath. Be present. Be mindful instead of having your mind full, you know? Like, just slow down. Slow down. And that's really what I got from this, is just be grateful for what you have and slow down, you know, appreciate your surroundings, be more vigilant, be more careful, and involve the people in your lives more actively, be more social. Don't isolate yourself, like cramming a year's worth of sugar into your mouth in one night. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. That's pretty much what I got from it. I can't wait to see the rest of the discussions and what you guys all think, because honestly, this was just a really eye-opening read for me. It really makes you not only appreciate what we do have, but it really makes you wonder about what we could have, you know? Yeah, see you guys next week.